Okay. Okay. No problem. Call the meeting to order. May I have roll call, please?
Councilman Camburis?
Here.
Councilwoman Peterson? Here. Councilman Canella?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Vargo?
Here.
Mayor Sakala?
Here. Will everyone please rise for the flag salute? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Adequate notice of this meeting was duly provided to the Verona Cedar Grove Times and the Star Ledger by email and published in an annual schedule of meetings December 28th, 2018, filed with the Township Clerk and posted on the public bulletin board in the municipal building lobby in accordance with Open Public Meetings Act. Good evening, everybody. Before we begin and we start moving toward our agenda, I just have a couple of announcements. We're going to do something a little bit different tonight with our meeting. There are some issues, obviously, that we're going to be discussing at next week's meeting. We have a public hearing on the two zoning ordinances. So I'm going to ask that if anybody is here specifically with regard to asking questions about either of those two zoning ordinances, that you understand that we are not fielding questions about them this evening. We are not discussing them this evening. We have an entire public hearing set for 1 week from tonight at 7 o'clock with all of our professionals, including the special master from the court, who will be present to answer all your questions and to be able to help us get to this still recording? It's out. The mic, is it okay, or the mic went out? Never mind, got it. Okay. The professionals will be here to answer all the questions that you have about those ordinances, to answer, quite frankly, questions that we have about those ordinances. So that will not be a part of the discussion tonight, and it will not be part of any questions that we will be taking tonight. Also, when we get to the portion of the meeting tonight for public comment, we're going to break this up into two parts tonight. And the first part is going to be anybody who has public comment or questions about anything having to do with anything in general that doesn't include a petition that has been passed around town or the Cliffside Drive property. That'll be the first part of the public comment. The reason for that is that we have a councilman who is conflicted out of those discussions and may not be part of those discussions as he sits up here on the dais as a councilman. So we certainly will field those questions and comments if anyone has them, but we're going to take care of all other things first, and then we'll ask Councilman Camburis to step down. He can join the General Assembly, and anybody who has questions or comments, including council members, which I'll ask council members to also withhold questions or comments about the petition or the Cliffside Drive property as it relates to the petition, not to the zoning ordinance, for the second part of the public comment. So I hope that's not too confusing. Everyone got it? Okay. It was confusing. Okay, I'll tell you what, Mr. Burns, if you go astray, I'll let you know. Okay, very good. Okay, so let's move on the agenda. We have a public hearing under 2A to consider adoption of pending ordinance number 18-831, amending Chapter 190 of the Township Code entitled Peddling and Soliciting. I think we have to wait for the ordinance to be read, right?
An ordinance amending Chapter 190 of the Code of the Township of Cedar Grove entitled Peddling and Soliciting.
At this time, I would like to open up the hearing to any members of the public who wish to be heard on this ordinance. Seeing none, close that portion of the meeting.
Mayor, I move for the adoption of pending ordinance 18831 to be published in the Verona Cedar Grove Times as a passed ordinance to take effect as prescribed by law.
Is there a second?
So moved.
May I have a roll call? Sorry, is there any discussion? May I have a roll call, please?
Councilman Coumbouras?
Yes.
Councilwoman Peterson?
Yes.
Councilman Tinella?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Vargo?
Yes.
Mayor Sakala?
Yes. And item 2B is a public hearing to consider adoption of pending ordinance number 18-832, amending Chapter 186 of the Township Code entitled Parental Supervision of Minors.
Mayor, I move for the adoption of, oops, sorry.
An ordinance of the Township of Cedar Grove, County of Essex, State of New Jersey, amending Chapter 186 of the Township Code entitled Parental Supervision of Minors.
At this time, I would open the meeting up to public hearing on that ordinance. Does anybody wish to be heard? Seeing none, close that portion of the meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved. I'll read it. Mayor, I move for the adoption of pending ordinance number 18-832 to be published in the Verona Cedar Grove Times as a passed ordinance to take effect as prescribed by law.
Second, Mayor.
Any discussion? May I have roll call, please?
Councilman Coumbouras?
Yes.
Councilwoman Peterson?
Yes.
Councilman Tinella?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Vargo?
Yes.
Mayor Sakala?
Yes. At this time, I would like to open the meeting up to residents who are wishing to be heard on any item that is on the agenda. Seeing none, close that portion of the meeting, and we're going to move on to the reports of township officials. Good evening, Mr. Tucci.
Good evening, Mayor. First item I have this evening, in the packet, there's a letter addressed to Office of County Council dated August 2nd. What it is a letter telling the County of Essex that the trestle in the center of town cannot support any more banners or any advertising on it, other than the advertisement by the county about their park system. You cannot advertise about Turtle Bank Zoo. We cannot put any of the banners that we traditionally put up there. Unfortunately, there's an NJDOT regulation that prohibits that. They had come in, they took down all our banners, they brought them in and then returned them to us, but this is just a notification, because the county did receive 2 violation notices regarding banners on the trestle. So from here forward, we will not be able to put any advertisements on the trestle in any way, shape, or form.
Mr. Tucci?
Mayor, through you, Mayor. Mr. Tucci, I see Ms. Hartwick here tonight. I know a couple months ago, we raised the issue of possibly doing or looking into a digital sign. And I don't know, Ms. Hartwick, I know you're here and you're going to report later, but I don't know if that regulation prohibits a digital sign on there as well that would encompass all those different, the signage that we...
It's my understanding that that would be
That'd be
prohibited
prohibited.
also.
Okay.
Deputy Mayor?
Mr. Tucci, as you know, the Downtown Advisory Committee's talked about beautifying underneath the trestle, the walls on the side. Is that impacted by this?
That I don't know. We would have to get further clarification on that issue about what the Downtown Advisory Committee had planned. The best thing I would do is I would put something together and send it down to the county and let them review it and give us an answer.
Okay, thank you.
That's my suggestion. Second item I have this evening, also in the packet, there is a letter from New Jersey Department of Corrections. Happy to report that our cell block downstairs in our police facilities have passed muster. We got a letter saying that everything is in order downstairs, and we're good as we're operating right now. So that's very good news. Additionally, in the packet, there is a memo addressed to me from Alex Palumbo, our township engineer, regarding award of design for the reconstruction of the upper playground at Community Park. I know we had applied for the Community Development Block Grant, which we were successful in receiving. So we want to authorize the design of that upper playground. That is a bit outdated, and the design as it currently exists does not meet today's safety standards. So the recommendation is to move forward with that. I don't know if you want to take these one at a time, Mayor, or
Yeah, that's,
is that, I don't know what the council's pleasure is about this, but we want to put a resolution on awarding for the next meeting, if that's okay with the governing body.
is there any objection?
No, Mayor.
No objection, Mr.
Okay.
Tucci.
Next item I have is the recommendation for award of design for the replacement of the water main on Church and Elm. That's part of our water capital. We had allocated it this year. It was in our capital bonding ordinance for water, and we're looking to award the design for that to Neglia Engineering. We'd like to put a resolution on to award the design of the water main replacement.
Any objection by the council? No
Just
objection,
as a
Mr. Tucci.
little tidbit of information, I know everyone has read a lot about the water system in Hoboken, and a lot of that is replacement of old water mains. We have a program here, we try to do 1 or 2 water lines per year and stay ahead of the curve. That's why you'll see this. And you'll see it, again, reoccurring year after year. Additionally, we have 2 requests for block parties, one from the Ridgewood Acres area and one from Brunswick Road. I don't know if the council has any objection.
Any objection?
These groups have traditionally had it year after year, and it's a good time for the neighboring community.
No objection, Mr. Tucci.
Also, we have a recommendation for award of bid for the milling and overlay of Baden Road. Baden Road is a pretty well-traveled roadway. It's in disrepair right now, so we would like to award that also.
Mr. Tucci, I saw that in the packet.
Uh-huh.
Is just out of curiosity, the lowest bidder who got that bid, is that, it's not the same contractor as?
Yes, it is.
It is the same
Yes, it is.
contractor on Cedar?
Mhm.
Okay.
But again, different type of construction. That roadway was total reconstruct. This is just a mill and overlay.
Okay.
2 inches off, 2 inches on.
Mayor's question.
Uh-huh.
Mr. Tucci, what's the status of, just for the public, Route 23 in Harper? You know, what's the status of Harper?
Route 23, as a matter of fact, you're going to get a recommendation for award of design on that. That was the DOT, also a grant that we received.
Wait, for which one? For Harper?
For Harper Terrace.
Okay, so Harper.
And what's
Right.
going to happen is, we already received some quotes, but they were above the engineer's estimate.
Right.
So we're going back out, and you're going to get that very shortly.
So we'll get that shortly. Is still the timeframe to do that this year, depending on the weather?
It's not going to be this year.
That-
It will be
spring.
in the spring.
Okay.
It will not be before the spring.
Okay, and then shifting gears to, what's the status on, I know each one of us seems to ask at the meeting, what's the status of Route 23?
Route 23,
If we know.
at the last I had that it was supposed to start in October. I doubt very much if that's going to happen, because there is some work being done on the overpass here right at Taylor's Brook, right at Bowden, and so there's going to be some bridge work done there, so that may delay it. It may be November, December before this thing gets started.
Are you confident it's not, so we may have to go through another winter like we did last year?
It's possible at this point. Again, everything is wishful thinking.
Right.
DOT never gives you a definite schedule. They give you an estimated schedule because it's an evolving thing. Every time they find something additional, it pushes the schedule back.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Also, I would like to ask for one confidential regarding PBA negotiations.
That fall under personnel or negotiations? or
Negotiations.
Negotiations.
Negotiations. And additionally, later on the agenda, you'll see a resolution for submission of an application for DOT for reconstruction of Ozone Avenue. I know that was one residents have been requesting for a while, and that's next up on the list. And that's all I have for this evening, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Tucci. Ms. Stutz, good evening.
Good evening, Mayor. The only thing I have is to make you aware that a petition had been submitted and is currently being reviewed for sufficiency.
Thank you. Mr. Cataldo, our Township Attorney.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the Township Attorney has no reports this evening.
Thank you very much. Council reports. I'll open up with my report. First, I just want to remind everybody that tomorrow is September 11th, and this year our township September 11th memorial remembrance is going to be incorporated with Cedar Grove Board of Education and Cedar Grove Waves, and we will be joining them in a joint remembrance tomorrow morning, beginning at 8:20 at the high school. It'll be in the parking lot in the corner near the auditorium. Of course, Cedar Grove Waves has the 2,977 flags out, and if anybody didn't hear, it's been all over the news that a piece of steel from the World Trade Center has been donated to Cedar Grove High School and Cedar Grove Waves, and there is now an area by where the ceremony will occur that monument using this piece of steel will be unveiled tomorrow morning as well. So if any resident wishes to attend, all are welcome. It will be all the students at the high school, faculty and staff of the high school, the council, the manager, and anybody from the public who wishes to attend. So please do so if you want to take part in the 9/11 memorial. So from that to good news, as everyone probably has heard by now, I am very happy to announce that after a very, very long process, we have acquired, or we're actually in contract to acquire, the 53 acres of open space that is on the west side of Ridge Road across from the Newark Reservoir. This effort has started more than a year ago, or a year and a half ago probably, where we as a council, and nobody will be given any individual credit, despite who started the process and who continued the process. This was done as a joint effort by the council members that you see sitting up here. We started this process with the thought that if there's any way that we can acquire open space in Cedar Grove, that we would like to. And because there had been so much talk about what would happen if the city of Newark decided to sell that property to a developer, we were contacting the city of Newark, again, well over a year and a half ago, writing letters, asking them to come to the table, and they finally did. Our persistence paid off, and we are about to purchase that property. Once we do, and I'll talk to you about a little bit of detail about it in a second, but once we do, we're going to deed that property over to Green Acres, and that property will be a piece of Cedar Grove open space forever. It will never be developed, and it will be preserved in its current state. There's no plans to do anything on that property except leave it as it is. The price, people have been asking me about the price. The price was $11.5 million, and what our intention is, and nothing is set in stone because we do have pilot money coming from the Hilltop, but we don't know exactly until the Hilltop is built. We don't know exactly how much money is going to be coming, and there are other things we're earmarking some of that pilot money for, like education and communication system for our police and EMS and firemen. But when all is said and done, it is our hope that we will dedicate a portion of the pilot money to that purchase, so that we do not have to raise any taxes to purchase this piece of property. In addition, since the pilot monies will not be available for several years, and we do need to bond now to purchase the property, we do have a balance in our open space trust fund. There's a little bit over, there's almost $600,000, and we will use that money initially to cover the debt service. So again, we're not raising taxes to purchase this property. The plan was, in the council's mind, that we acquire this property without raising one penny of taxes to any of the residents, and that's the path that we're on. So that's our plan. There'll be, if anyone has any questions about it during the public comment, you're more than welcome to ask any questions. And with that, I don't have anything further.
Mayor, I have two questions on that, if not for you, for maybe Mr. Tucci. It was my understanding with regard to the buildings on that property, those are Newark's buildings, they're going to demolish those as part of this and relocate them?
The plan is they're going to leave them.
They're gonna leave them?
We would be responsible for the demolition of the buildings.
Okay.
And that's what the plan is, to demolish all buildings on it and just leave it open space, nothing on the land, as the mayor had indicated.
Okay. And then what about the reservoir itself? We've talked about in the past where the actual reservoir is, I guess the future of that. if we know?
Well, again, in my discussions with Newark General Counsel, they indicate to me and their engineers with the city of Newark that they cannot do anything with the Newark watershed property proper, meaning where the water is. That they're restricted by regulation because it is a water supply, that it cannot be developed.
And then I know early on, when this first came to fruition, they talked about draining it, putting tanks in there. Now, that's my understanding, I believe that's changed as well, too.
Well, we
correct?
had discussion on that. The city of Newark engineers indicated to me that DEP is frowning upon that option. They're looking to put a UV disinfecting system, which will satisfy their obligation to the EPA, and that is their plan moving forward. I think that's part of what this sale of property is, so that they can obtain the capital to make those modifications.
Thank you, Ms. Tucci. Thanks, Mayor.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So as you noted in the beginning, I'll reserve my comments. I'm going to specifically reserve part of my comments with regard to the purchase that you just mentioned and the petition. But with respect to my report for this portion of the meeting, so I want to commend Cedar Grove Waves and David Schoner specifically for, his dedication, all the volunteers that we had throughout the community to really, that got out there. It's such a fantastic way to remember 9/11. I'm looking forward to being there with you tomorrow. The other item that I have is with regard to the Downtown Advisory Committee. We have, as a reminder, we have our Crafttoberfest. It's a new event that we're doing in the downtown area, as you've all have heard me say many times, that we're trying to bring excitement to the downtown area, beautify the downtown area, and do as much as we can in that downtown area to bring folks to walk, to shop, and to eat at our restaurants down there. So our Crafttoberfest, you'll have the sale of crafts. We'll have some music. We'll also have craft beer. And we're partnering with Unico again, who's been a fantastic partner for the Downtown Advisory Committee. So it's from 4 to 8 on October 20th, which is a Saturday. So if you have anything to sell, if you have a craft that you do, I encourage you to reach out to us through our Discover Cedar Grove Facebook page, because I think it's going to be an exciting event. And as we keep doing these events, we're going to keep building that excitement, and ultimately these events are going to be we're going to be doing year after year. So that's my report for this portion of the meeting.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councilman Camboris?
I want to thank the mayor and the council. We all did this equally, preserving that Cedar Grove Reservoir property, and it's outstanding. On another note, the Regional Flood Board, I brought it up a couple of times. During a staff meeting, would it be appropriate, Mayor, if we discuss possibly having a regional flood board with just Verona? Maybe we could talk about that in a future meeting, staff meeting, if that's all right.
There's no problem with that, sure.
Okay. And Mr. David Schoner, if it's all right with the council, is there something that we could possibly do for a resident that is outstanding and stands out in the community? A plaque or a certificate for this gentleman? He seems to be doing above and beyond for our township.
I think that would be appropriate. What is the council's thoughts on that?
That's appropriate.
Maybe we can put together a proclamation for Mr. Schoner, all his involvement, Ms. Stutz, in Cedar Grove Waves, and bringing our community to the forefront of being able to remember such a solemn event. And I can provide you some information. Maybe we can put that on for the next public. It's a good idea. Thank you, Councilman.
That's it. Thank you.
Councilwoman,
Good evening,
How are you?
Mayor. I just also wanted to commend Mr. Schoner. I know that this time particularly, the weather has not been on his side. It's been brutally hot, then it's been raining, and he's been out there day and night putting those flags in. It's a tremendous amount of work. It's a amazing tribute, and it's great, especially for the youth of the town, who some of them weren't even alive when it happened, to see this. It's amazing. So that's a great idea, Councilman Camburis. He should be recognized for these efforts. Also, just the Municipal Alliance will be at the Cedar Grove High School Back to School Night. They will have a table for the Safe Home Pledge. So anyone who will be at Back to School Night, come see the Municipal Alliance Committee. And that's all I have for tonight.
Thank you.
I
Councilman
don't have any
Tinella?
report, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman Tinella. We'll move on the agenda. Item 5A on the consent agenda. 5A is to consider resolution concerning reappointment of municipal judge.
Be it resolved by the Township Council that Nicholas Brindisi be and is hereby reappointed as municipal court judge for the Township of Cedar Grove to serve a 3-year term commencing September 22nd, 2018, and terminating September 22nd, 2021.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second, Mayor.
Under discussion, I'd just like to thank Judge Brindisi for all his hard work. You know, he comes in here year after year at budget time, and he shows us what a great demonstrable hold he has on this court system here, and what a great job he does administering justice within the town. So I'd just like to thank him and congratulate him and say, you know, great work. May I have roll call, please?
Councilman Camburis?
Yes.
Councilwoman Peterson?
Yes.
Councilman Tinella?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Vargo?
Yes.
Mayor Sakala?
Yes. Ms. Stutz, can I take 5B and C together?
Absolutely.
On consent agenda, 5B and C is to consider resolution concerning approval of raffle application for the Cedar Grove Elks Club, and to consider resolution concerning approval of raffle application for Lupus Foundation.
Be it resolved that said applications are hereby approved.
May I have a motion, please?
So
Motion.
moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilman Camburis?
Yes.
Councilwoman Peterson?
Yes.
Councilman Tinella?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Vargo?
Yes.
Mayor Sakala?
Yes. Under new business, 6A, to consider resolution concerning submission/execution of the 2019 NJDOT grant application agreement.
Be it resolved that the Township Council formally approves the grant application for the DOT application for improvements to Ozone Avenue project.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second, Mayor.
Is there any discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilman Camburis?
Yes.
Councilwoman Peterson?
Yes.
Councilman Tinella?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Vargo?
Yes.
Mayor Sakala?
Yes. 6B, to consider resolution concerning renewal of ABC license for Down Neck LLC.
Be it resolved that the application for renewal of Down Neck LLC is hereby approved.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilman Camburis?
Yes.
Councilwoman Peterson?
Yes.
Councilman Tinella?
Abstain.
Deputy Mayor Vargo?
Yes.
Mayor Sakala?
Yes. Item 6C, to consider resolution concerning purchase from National Joint Powers Alliance.
Be it resolved that the council authorizes the Township of Cedar Grove to purchase from National Joint Powers Alliance the purchase of a 4-ton asphalt hot box.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Is there any discussion?
Yes, I think this would need some discussion, only because it just needs to be informational so that everybody understands. First of all, 4-ton hot box is an asphalt machine which allows DPW to purchase asphalt, put it in. It has propane burners and it keeps the material warm. Meaning, if the guys at the end of the day are not finished with a certain amount of asphalt work, that asphalt doesn't have to be thrown out. That gets brought back to DPW. The burner next day warms it back up and it can be utilized. And also, the box allows us to do street repairs in a bigger quantity in bigger sections. This was something that was in the 2018 capital improvement budget, which this governing body authorized, and we're buying it toward cooperative purchasing, the cooperative purchasing agency, which gives us a cheaper price. So that's a little bit of an explanation in case anybody want to know why we're buying it this way and what we're buying.
Thank you, Mr. Tucci. May I have roll call, please?
Councilman Camburis?
Yes.
Councilwoman Peterson?
Yes.
Councilman Tinella?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Vargo?
Yes.
Mayor Sakala?
Yes. Item 6D, to consider resolution concerning tax cancellation granted by Essex County Board of Taxation.
Be it resolved that the required tax cancellations be made.
Is there a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilman Camburis?
Yes.
Councilwoman Peterson?
Yes.
Councilman Tinella?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Vargo?
Yes.
Mayor Sakala?
Yes. And item 6E, to consider resolution concerning tax cancellation for Block 201, Lot 48.
Be it resolved that the required tax cancellation be made.
Is there a
I
motion?
make a motion to approve, Mayor.
Second.
Thank you. May I have roll call, please?
Councilman Camburis?
Yes.
Councilwoman Peterson?
Yes.
Councilman Tinella?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Vargo?
Yes.
Mayor Sakala?
Yes. Item 7, approval of bills.
Be it resolved that the summary of bills having been duly audited and found correct are hereby ordered paid in the amount of $2,069,011.13.
Is there a motion?
So moved, Mayor.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilman Camburis?
Yes.
Councilwoman Peterson?
Yes.
Councilman Tinella?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Vargo?
Yes.
Mayor Sakala?
Yes. Okay, I'm going to open up the meeting for, no, stay right there, Councilman. I'm going to open up the meeting for public comment. And again, I'll run through this again for Mr. Burns and for anyone else who may not have been here. The first portion of public comment is going to be for any items having to do with anything except for a petition that has been circulating around town and anything having to do with Cliffside Drive. Councilman Camburis is conflicted out of that, and he may not partake in any discussions regarding either of those items from this side of the dais. He can sit in the audience and partake in them at that point. So in order to prohibit or not to have councilmen back and forth, we're going to do it this way. So anybody having comment on anything else other than those items, please, now's your opportunity. When that is over, then we will open up for public comment regarding either the petition or anything having to do with Cliffside Drive, except the zoning ordinances. Okay, Mr. Burns?
Good evening. Paul Burns, 2 Elm Drive, Cedar Grove. First off, I'm happy to hear that we're going to redo Elm Drive. Take up the pipes. We've been waiting for that a long time. Anyway, the other question I have is, it might be directed to the county representative. I want to know if she could, are we planning on fixing the path? The 5-mile stretch. It's really bad. I mean, everything's dug out. You know, the whole path is just a shambles. There's 2-foot ditches on it and everything like that. And I wanted to know if there was a plan for that. Do we know anything about it?
No, the path on
The path, the rail trail. The rail trail.
the rail, okay.
I mean, it's really pretty bad. You know, I was just wondering if there was a plan to take care of that.
As far as I know, no, but when Ms. Hartwick comes up, we'll ask her if she has any information about it.
That's a pretty big issue. I don't know if you walk it, you know, a lot of residents said they walk on it and it's pretty bad. Even the bicycles, it's bad. I had a question, and the only reason I got this question is because my wife just brought it up. In the paper or maybe it was on a computer, they're talking about something on the reservoir. They're talking about a cover. The county or the state awarded a few $1 million to cover the reservoir, and I don't understand it. Do we know anything about it?
Well, I think Councilman Tinella asked those questions to Mr. Tucci during my report earlier. And I think the answer was, and Mr. Tucci can correct me if I'm wrong, that the city of Newark has no intention to cover that reservoir, put tanks in that reservoir, and they're going to a UV system so that the reservoir will stay in its current state.
So the cover was what's the description of a cover? I don't understand that. Do you know?
A cover is something that goes over the top of something.
In other words, like, as you were saying, in other words, drain it and cover it? Is that what they're talking about?
I think I don't want to speak for the city of Newark, so
Yeah.
I can't really answer that question, but what I can tell you, what I think they're talking about is there's a problem with, or a perceived problem with, geese feces or other things in the reservoir. So if they covered it or they put tanks in the reservoir, that would, excuse me, that would solve some of their problems. However, our understanding now is they're going to a UV filtration system, and they don't have any intention of covering it, putting tanks, closing it, draining it. They're leaving it in its current state as far as the information that we've been given.
Which, as far as I remember, what you were talking about, it's not an issue. It's not a feasible opportunity because it's still a drainage point for the water system. Am I right on that, or am I wrong?
I'm not sure of your question.
Well, I'm asking is because it's a filtration from the Newark watershed. So the water comes down and it goes into different pods. I'm thinking, and if they just shut it, then you're losing the filtration on everything. I was just curious.
Possibly, but again, there's no indication from the city of Newark that they're planning on closing the reservoir.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, it's quite the opposite from what
Yeah.
we've been told.
Okay.
That's correct, Mr. Tucci? I'm not-
That's the information that we
Okay.
have.
All right. Thank you.
Hi, Bob Farrell, 596 Ridge Road. To follow up, what he's talking about is we had a grant from the EPA of about $63 million for the purposes of building a cover for Cedar Grove. That was published on the federal EPA website on Thursday. So that's what the grant is. And so I'm kind of curious about how current is the information about the ultraviolet solution?
Well, I'm going to let Mr. Tucci answer that question, but I can tell you that we don't control the reservoir. It's City of Newark property, so
Sure.
some of your questions may have to be directed to them, but we can answer what we know,
Yeah.
and that's only what they tell us, basically.
Yeah.
When I had a meeting with them 2 months ago, the ultraviolet system was the direction they were going in. If that changed, I don't know, I have any information on that.
Yeah. Is there any way to get visibility into that?
We can ask the question, but I mean, I think that anyone who's looking for the type of answer that you're looking for would be better off directing it yourself to the city of Newark.
Yeah, they're not too responsive. That's the answer there, so.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yes.
I think it's an important topic, and if
Yeah.
that's information is accurate, and it sounds like it
It
is
is
as of Thursday of last week, you said?
Yep.
It may be worthwhile to have the town manager follow up with the city of Newark to see if there's any further information we can glean from them.
I'm happy to forward you the exact links as they're published in several places now.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
Mr. Tucci, is that
Thank you for bringing that to
is
our
that
attention.
is that a problem? Would that be okay to reach out to?
I'll try to reach out, see if I get some information on it.
Okay. And if we get information, how would that feed back to the public, just out of curiosity?
Well, if you,
Public meeting.
we can answer, you can come back to a public meeting and we
And
can
ask
let.
for an update at the time.
However, if you send me the link, if you email the links to either myself, or Deputy Mayor, or Mr. Tucci,
Okay.
and we get any information, we can certainly email you back.
Okay, forgive me, I don't have your email address. Is that somewhere I can get at it?
If you go to the municipal website,
Yeah.
our email addresses are there.
You got it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, through you, would you state your name again for the record?
Sure, it's Bob, last name's Farrell, Farrell, 596 Ridge Road.
Thank you.
Sure.
596.
Good evening, Ms. Hartwick.
Good evening. Kate Hartwig, Essex County Liaison. Through you, Mayor Sakala, for Mr. Burns' question regarding the West Essex Trail.
Thank you.
I'm not aware of any planned maintenance to that trail at this time, but I will bring that back to the Parks Director and his superintendent to see what is coming up in the rest of 2018 for that trail.
Thank you.
I left downstairs here in Town Hall this autumn guide of events that are hosted by the County of Essex. Just to highlight those that are coming up this month, tomorrow morning at 8 a.m., the county will host its remembrance ceremony at the September 11th Memorial in Eagle Rock Reservation. The public is invited to attend. and it is held annually and has been since the first anniversary of the event. On Tuesday, September 18th, which is next week, we will host the Essex County Senior Wellness Day at Cody Arena. It is a free event for all seniors in Essex County to participate in. It comes from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. You can find more information on the website. If you do need senior transportation to the event, you may call 973-737-7200 to arrange for that transportation. And then later this month, on Saturday, September 29th, here in Cedar Grove, we will host the Essex County Paper Shredding Day at the Public Works Garage on Bradford Avenue. Again, that's open from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. And then on Saturday, October 6th, the Household Hazardous Waste Collection will take place up on Fairview Avenue next to the old hospital center for county residents from 8:30 a.m. to 4 p.m.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, may I ask Ms. Harper
Yes.
a question? I asked a question earlier about the trestle, the restrictions that were placed on the trestle. Would we be able to follow up to see if there's any restrictions on the side of the trestle?
I will have that discussion with the Department of Public Works. They are the ones who handle our relationship with DOT, and that notice that Mr. Tucci referenced did come from DOT. And I'll have to get some clarification about whether the sides are included in those restrictions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman?
Ms. Hartwick, is there any update on the decommissioning of the wellhead up there?
My understanding is that project is complete.
Okay, thank you very much, I appreciate it.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. McVeigh.
Kevin McVeigh, 19 Briarwood Terrace. I would like to personally thank the mayor and the council for your efforts in securing the property adjacent to the reservoir. I know it's a work in progress, but being optimistic. You all ran on a platform of keeping Cedar Grove green and limiting development, and I appreciate you living up to your word. And this personally means a lot to me, since my property runs right up to the wetlands there. This might be a little preliminary, but has there been any thought to who's going to be in charge of maintenance as far as like cutting down overgrown trees? Is that a little bit too early for that?
Well, Mr. Tucci?
Maintenance will be handled by the municipality.
Great.
It'll be Cedar Grove property, so we'll be responsible for maintaining it.
Yeah, that's what I figured, but I just want to clarify that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Snyder?
David Snyder, 4 Granite Drive, Cedar Grove, and I too want to say a thank you for all the effort to maintain and to find that property and keep it as green space, and I look forward to time well spent in the woods there. Just to also follow up with the county executive, I know we've had success with partnering, that is, partnering with the Verona Environmental Council and Cedar Grove Environmental Council to do some cleanup on the West Essex Trail. And there was a really good cleanup last year where we also involved, I think, both Verona and Cedar Grove's Department of Public Works. So perhaps as we go forward and know that the trail does need a lot of work, we might be, the Environmental Commission might be open to any ideas of how to resource what will be needed to maintain that trail. One of our members, I don't think Max is here tonight, but is very interested in doing some trail work and has some expertise along those lines. There was a lot of washout on that trail. It is exciting to me that we'll have more opportunities to walk in the woods and run in the woods and bike in the woods, but it needs to be also safe. So I am open to the council's recommendation for how to keep those trails in good repair, and certainly as environmental council member, I'll do all I can as well to maintain properly that trail. That's all I have for this moment.
Thank you, Mr. Snyder. Anybody else wishing to be heard? Please state your name and address.
My name is Arvind Desai, 24 Hilltop Drive. And I have concern about the easement very close to my house, my property. I've been Cedar Grove resident from last 37 years. And originally, the easement is only coming from Stevens Avenue, and it's just finished at my property at Hilltop Drive. Now, they did some construction, but my point is that now the water flow intensity is so high, when anything rain, then usually you have so much water coming out. And they have a grid very close to where the opening is, near my property. And what happened is that a lot of debris come through, rocks, leaves, and it's also blocked, and then the water overflow, and it also comes through my property. And the last one on August 11th, what we have is the worst one, and I have some picture, and I've been emailing to Alex, engineer, and he tried to take care of it. But right now, they clean up the whole brook. But what happened is that they use my property and make a lot of damage, and it's not even done yet. So this is the complaint I have.
When you say it's not even done yet, what's not even done yet?
They
They're
use
not
the
done.
machinery to go through to clean up the brook, and they damage my shrubs and the whole property.
Mr. Tucci, is that something that we can look at to see?
Well, I believe the resident said that we were in there, we already cleaned it up, and we're following up on what needs to be done upstream. Because what's happening is the debris from upstream, when there's heavy flow, washes down and settles on the bottom. So we're trying to clean from the channel behind his house all the way up. What happens is, his property is the one that's on a hotspot list. So what happens before every storm, like even before today's storm, the men go out there and there's a grate, they clean the grate. But what happens is during the storm, it builds up and sometimes it overflows. And that's what the residents are
But
referring
only
to.
thing is that from last 5 years, that somehow the water intensity is so high compared to when I start to live there. And I never had, right now, I have to call every time, every week to the engineering department to make sure that they clean up before and after the rain. And because of the scheduling issue or whatever, usually, it's a hard time, and I understand that maybe they are busy with some other project, but still, this is very important because every time it's overflow whenever is a heavy rain. Not with, this is the worst one, but it's happening a lot. And I never called before, ever, but now, every week, to Karen or also to Alex, write the email and do everything I can. But this is, it's not right. Something is happening and the water flow is so much. Maybe some of the water has to be diverted, and that's the only easement is open from Stevens to my house, which is about maybe 500 feet. So something has to be done.
Yeah, I believe Mr. Tucci said that they're working on it. I know that the cleanup continues.
They're cleaning the channel out.
And then how about the residents' concern that we're damaging his property during the cleanup process?
Well, the township is not, what's happening is, it's the flow of water that's bringing debris down, rocks and
So it's
branches
not our
and trees.
equipment that's doing that?
No, our equipment is not in there. What happens is the flow of water behind his house comes from Park Ridge Estates, comes through the Macedonian Church, comes underneath Route 23, and then into a channel. And he's right, the velocity is very great, and that's what's happening. But it is, like I said, it is on a hotspot list. It is before every storm and after every storm, it is clean.
It's something that they're trying to address piecemeal because of the velocity of the water that comes down there. You are what they've classified as in a hotspot, so it is something that they're going to attend to both before and after every rainfall. I don't know, that might not give you the...
I know that every rainfall, and as you know, in New Jersey, it rains every week. So usually, somebody has to make sure that this can be done on a weekly basis. And my point is, when I bought that house, they were saying is that one day maybe they're going to close this, but nothing happened yet. And I went through the wetland and all that report through the township. And I understand whatever the wetland rules and regulations are, but I think this is only 500 feet the total right now is open. And after my property closed, all we're going up on the other side of the Hilltop Drive. So I don't know, there gotta be some reason, or maybe because a lot of construction been built in the last 20 years, I guess. And because of the intense of water, like Mr. Tucci said, that something is changing. It's like so intense that it always overflow.
Well, what we can,
Only, there should be some audience too, because the grass clip, even the other side of Stevens is closed, and on my side, there's only 3 houses, maybe total 4 houses, but still you got the debris like a soda can, beer bottle. I don't know how they get there.
Deputy, did you have a comment?
Sir, I didn't catch your name and your address. And I
Okay,
just
my
want to
name
I'm trying to picture where you are.
Arvind Desai,
Arvind Desai,
and my address is 24 Hilltop Drive,
44 Hilltop.
Lot 300, Lot 58.
Okay.
Mr. Desai, Mr. Tucci has heard what you said tonight. We will definitely make sure the engineering department stays on top of it and does the best they can with what you have there. I appreciate you coming and pointing this out to us tonight.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anybody with any further public comment for this portion of the public comment session? Please state your name and address, please.
Yes, good evening. My name is Charlie Roussel. I live at 26 Hillside Avenue, and I'm a resident now for about 8 years. I have a couple of questions and just a point of concern if I can address. I don't know if you want to answer each question individually, or should I ask the questions and then wait for the answer as well as the comment?
One at a time is fine.
One at a time, okay. Having moved in from an area that was very developed, I was wondering if via the email or any system that an individual like myself would be able to just get a total look at or a glimpse of exactly how much open area, open land we have here in Cedar Grove. And then, out of curiosity, seeing what the plan is for any area, not specific ones, just in general, what's available and what is the plan for that to happen?
Well, is there a map of the engineering department that this gentleman can come and look at?
Yes, there is. There is mapping. As a matter of fact, there's an aerial photo in the conference room which depicts, I could tell you off the top of my head with the pieces that are left in Cedar Grove. There's the 53.6 acres that the council's in the process of acquiring. There is the property, I believe it's like 23 acres on Cliffside Drive, and I believe there's a small piece of property which in the front is wetlands, in the back up near Staples on Route 23 at the corner of Ridge. Those are primarily the only vacant open space pieces. There are pieces with buildings on it in addition to that, but as far as open space, then there are some other open space pieces, but they are on the open space Green Acres inventory. There's a small piece in Park Ridge Estates on the west side of Eileen Drive. That's probably about an acre. There's also Tranquility Park, which is on the corner of Overlook and Highland. But that's about the remaining pieces off the top of my head that we have here in town.
And the engineering, if you go to the engineering department, you can look at a topographical map. They'll be happy to show it to you, and you can take a look for yourself and see what's open. As far as what there's any plans for right now.
Would I have to be anything filed through the open? No, to get any questions? All right.
If it's readily available, just come in, you'll get it.
Yeah.
All right, I will, just for the record, I will let you know that the area I was from was from the Meadowlands, and there are more hotels than could possibly be used in the community which I came from, which was Secaucus. There are hotels everywhere that were developed, and this Cedar Grove reminds me a lot of Secaucus, pre-hotel development. I was there before Channel 9 and the hospital, so I've seen it all. Panasonic came and left, and now something else is there as well. So it's just a concern as to what may happen here. It's a beautiful town. I couldn't be happier here. I actually saw the police officer last week, earlier in the week, who saved my life 2 years ago via some health issues that I had, and we are extremely happy here, and we love the small town feel with the trees and the whole suburban stereotype. May not be a white picket fence, it could be tan, but it's a fence, and it's nice. Secondly, in regards to I believe Brookdale Park is a county park. And I believe, I'm not sure, but across the street from the old Tool Center, that park that was built, is that a local park or a county park? Being in Brookdale Park for years, you see bicycles there. Is there any way possible, because Cedar Grove is such a hilly community and traffic community on the major streets, that a bike path around where the people walk can be put into that, since across the street where the park is, where the kids are. So the other side, heading toward Verona, is more of a walking track than anything else. So, like a little thin area that has bikes only to ride around, as you see bike paths on major streets, whether it be Bloomfield Avenue or in other communities on the major streets. For those of us who like to ride bikes and don't have to get in our cars and go 40 miles to ride our bikes 20 miles, and then hopefully not fall asleep on the way home.
Yeah, Cedar Grove Park is a county park, and the question about bikes in Cedar Grove Park has come up before, and the answer that we received, because we don't have control over that, is that there are no bikes allowed in Cedar Grove Park.
But they are allowed in Brookdale, which is a county park as well. So there is a basis for an argument or questions to retort on that, to ask for that. I mean, just out of curiosity.
Ms. Harwick, do you have any other insight into that? I think we've asked you this question before.
Or is everybody riding their bikes illegally in Brookdale?
Good evening. I can just clarify, the county's ordinance regarding bikes in parks is that bikes must be ridden on the roadways in parks, and not on the pathways. So in Brookdale, you do have Circle Drive that goes through the park. It's a roadway, and bikes are permitted on that area, but they are not to be ridden on the pathway, which would be like the paved walkways that go through the park.
So if anyone's riding their bike on that pathway in Brookdale Park, they're doing it in violation of the ordinance?
Violation of the ordinance, yes.
Thank you.
And the last thing is just a comment, as public officials, and I was once on ABC board and have held some titles for that. I implore the council to please, in a day and age in which we live in social media, to conduct ourselves on our best behavior. We all know what's been going on. I'm a type of guy who will say things, the conduct and behavior or wording or anything that's done via social media looks petty, and it seems like we are mirroring ourselves both on the federal level and the state level. And it's everybody not wanting to get along with each other, whether you're dealing with the federal level and who does or doesn't like, or whatever the issue is with Donald Trump. And then we look at the state level and you see our new governor is having difficulty as well. We have become so polarized and so specific that the biggest picture is, public servants serve the public. And you guys stepped up to the plate, and ladies stepped up to the plate to do so, and I commend you for that wholeheartedly. But as a picture of a community, we just hope that it is done, in as professional manner as possible, so it doesn't look, like controlled chaos sometimes. That's just a personal comment on my part. Again, my name is Charlie Roussel. I live at 26 Hillside. Anybody would like to speak to me, I'm ready and available, or I can email and so forth like that.
Thank you, Mr. Roussel. I appreciate your comments. Anybody else wishing to be heard on any general item before we move on to the second portion? Okay. I'm going to ask Councilman Camboris to step down. As a result, as I said before, as a result of a conflict, it would be improper for him to be on the dais when we open up discussion by either the council or the public on the next set of issues, which should be the last set of issues that we tackle tonight. As everyone knows, there's been a petition going around town. It has been submitted, as Ms. Stutz said, for consideration. So I'm going to first open up to the council if there's any comments on that or anything having to do with Cliffside Drive, except for obviously the ordinances, which we'll discuss next week.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, it's my understanding that my law firm has a potential conflict with this issue of Cliffside Drive too, so I'm going to step off the dais if it's okay with the council.
Thank you, Mr. Catala. Mr. Semeraro, if you'd like to assume the position. Thank you. Deputy Mayor, did you want to?
Yes, Mayor, thank you very much. I reserved some portions of my comments from earlier to address the purchase of the property and the petition in a holistic fashion. As we sit up here as town council members, recognize that, we will have disagreements. And I think that there is one topic that we will unconditionally agree upon, and that is preservation of open space. We all campaigned on it, we all believe in it, we all love this town, and we want to make sure that it stays green. So I want to get that out of the way because I think we will all agree that preservation of open space is a top priority for everybody. And obviously, and one of the ways that we did that was we got together as a town council. And over the past year and a half, and maybe even longer, we got together and we collectively decided that it was in the best interest of Cedar Grove to purchase or to attempt to purchase the 53 acres by the Newark property. And I have to, as much as it certainly is a full team effort because it takes the time and the effort to do that. I want to thank Mayor Sakala and our town manager, Tom Tucci, for their efforts and their foresight in pursuing that property because it took some persistence to get there. And I appreciate that, and it was because of their persistence that we were able to have a dialogue and discuss it. Mr. Roussel, you mentioned, a Facebook post, and when we look at the day and age that we live in, social media is the platform by which we communicate, and sometimes we agree and sometimes we disagree. I'm a firm believer in making sure that accurate information is put out there. I look at Cedar Grove like I look at my family, right? It's the bottom line. Cedar Grove is my family. And you might find that we're all protective of our family. And I am as protective of Cedar Grove as I am my family. So I just, it's important to me that full pictures are given when information is provided. So I'm going to say this, so I must stress this too. As I sit up here, I respect Mr. Camberis's opinion. In fact, when I was elected a year ago, I reached out to him and I had a conversation with him and we sat down and I didn't want to talk about anything but around the town. I wanted to get to know who he was and what his perspective is because I think it's important to understand the different perspectives that we have up here on the town council. I think it's valuable to our community to have disagreements, to have debates, and to fully understand those perspectives. So I want to say that. However, with all of that being said, I'm genuinely concerned by the information that's been put out there. And I've sat back for a month and change, and I'm genuinely concerned by the information that's put out there. So I'd like to take this opportunity to ask some questions and hopefully seek some clarification on this topic. Specifically, we talk about to shift over to the petition that's out there. I think, I'll say this again, we all wholeheartedly agree, 150%, that preservation of open space is and should be our top priority in this town, unequivocally. So I'll get that out of the way. But the questions that I have, and to Mr. Camberis, and you can feel free to answer them up there or not answer them, I'll leave it up to you. You know, we sat back over the past year and a half, and properties were discussed. The purchase and acquisition of properties for open space was 100% discussed. And I sit here and I'm confused because Mr. Camberis was part of those discussions, specifically the properties that were included in that petition, whether that information was shared or not. And I just sit here and I'm confused by the information that's provided, and I want to know, I'm curious as to, Mr. Camberis, was that information provided to the residents, A? And then B, you know, look, if I have a good idea for the community, I feel it's my obligation to bring it to the town council. Do you have any other information about those properties that would help in the acquisition of those properties? Are they for sale? Because ultimately, preserving our open space is the top priority. So I'm curious because if you recall when we discussed, there were challenges. They weren't for sale. There was environmental issues, DEP regulations. They were undevelopable in certain portions of it. So I ask Mr. Camberis if you have any additional information. I'd love to be able to hear it because I think we need to make a full and complete decision on it, especially being that you were part of those discussions when we actually discussed those properties. Sure, please.
Mr. Mayor, if I could just confer.
Yes, Mr. Cimarera.
My pause is just because of the unique circumstances that we're confronted with here. It's not common. There is not a whole lot of authority that gives us clear guidance, and I am striving to kind of strike a balance as to make sure that we don't step into the area where a conflict is exacerbated or created. To the extent that Mr. Camberis may feel constrained to reply to these questions, Mr. Camberis, you certainly understand that you can't be divulging any information that was
Discussed in
discussed in
executive
closed
session.
session,
I understand
correct?
that. Oh, yeah, I'm very aware of that.
Okay. I'm sure you were. I'm just
Yeah.
trying to make sure that we're all clearly on the same page. And I certainly take it that the deputy mayor's question wasn't to inquire into that realm either.
Correct.
We're talking about ancillary information he may have learned outside the scope of his position as councilman, which was utilized in the decisions to
For the
pursue
petition.
the petition. Is that
Correct.
correct? Okay. So you understand that, correct, Mr.
Correct.
Camberis?
I do.
Oh, okay. All right. I hate to keep on interjecting, but I just want to make sure we're doing
Feel
everything
free.
clear. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and if you see that it's
You
getting
stop.
close to the borderline, you can please jump in, because we
Talk
don't,
slow.
Yes. I'm going to talk very slow.
Okay.
I think the best way of answering the question is if I could use the Hilltop as an example, because it is somewhat similar. Would that be permissible?
I don't see a problem with it
Okay.
now.
Okay. During the Hilltop negotiations, when everybody was present, the comments from the other council members, and there's only one council member that's here, that's left from the older council member, they stated that nothing could be done. I kind of feel like something can be done, and at that time when I was involved with the Hilltop, I didn't have the opportunity because I was a councilman-elect and I was not on the council at the time. So-
Let me just interject something, Mr. Camberis. I just want to make sure, because I'm not familiar with the Hilltop, that preceded any of my involvement too, so if what I'm saying sounds wrong to you, I apologize. You're not referring to things that were said by council persons in closed session with regard to Hilltop, correct?
I was never part of closed sessions in Hilltop.
Okay, because I don't know, that's why I'm just,
Yes.
I'm just trying to be
Yes.
cautious, that's all.
I was given information at that desk, but I was not part of anything as an elected official.
Okay, so you're discussing things that were said on,
Yeah, so
in
I'm
an open
kind of
council
using
meeting.
an open jest
Okay.
of similar. I kind of feel like there's always something that can be done, and the only way I can answer that question that Mr. Vargo, Councilman Vargo has presented is that I'm trying to do something that's right for the residents of this town, only pertaining to open space, nothing else. Nothing of any of the other topics that we cannot discuss, is preserving the last of our open space. And I feel that the residents should play a larger role in deciding that by placing it on the ballot and letting them decide if they should proceed with protecting that or developing it if it should come up in a need to be developed. How was that? I don't think I can answer any more because it's part of our executive.
Maybe just a brief follow-up. I just so that we can make a full understanding, is there any other information that you have with regard to any open space properties that would be helpful in our decision to do something similar to what we did on the 53 acres, right? So the 53 acres, we identified the piece of property.
Yes.
We got together as a town council and we said, this would be great to preserve this as open space. And we worked together and we got that done.
Right.
So with regard to any property, I think it would be helpful if we, as a town council, knew if you had any information that would be helpful in assessing that.
I relayed probably most of that information at the time of closed session, and I cannot repeat it at this time.
Okay.
May I?
Yeah, please.
Mr. Caruso, now, I'm just a little confused, because you said that there's something that, you think something can be done.
Yes.
Okay. At what point did you determine that something could be done? Because without revealing anything that was said, you sat down with us in closed session for a year and a half and discussed things that we discussed, again, without getting into detail. And then, once you...
Mr. Mayor, I do apologize. And trust me when I tell you, I'm not trying to hinder the free exchange of communication here. But again, we're in uncharted territory. I think the council knows that it's my practice to be more prudent, err on the side of caution. And if he's down at the podium speaking as a member of the public, I don't think, I think it's a little dangerous sitting there and asking him about things that he considered as a councilman. And I think that we ought to shy away from that.
Is that something that would be more appropriate to discuss in closed session?
This is the quagmire that we're in. This is the catch-22. Because he's recused from participating in deliberations and closed sessions and votes as it relates to this particular property with regard to the pending zoning ordinance and with regard to this particular petition. There's a problem with how you could exchange that type of communication.
Okay, understood. But if I have a simple question as to when did this idea that something can be done, when did that arise?
Okay, I think that if you ask it that way and it's not predicated within his capacity as a councilman, I think the problem that I had was
Okay,
the
then I'll
prelude to the question was, as a councilman, we did X, Y, and Z. Essentially, why didn't it come up then? If you phrase it like that, I think that should do it.
I'll withdraw that question, and I'll ask another question. At what point did you determine that there was, quote-unquote, something that could be done with regard to open space with regard to open space?
When I recused myself because of the proximity of the property, and I was not allowed to participate, as a council person, you're not permitted to explore other avenues of that topic. So due to the fact that I'm no longer part of that, I was able then to ask questions because I was no longer part of that particular property in question. And when I asked questions to other people in a conversation, right, I found out that you can do something. And depending on how far you, and how much time you want to put into it, I guess that's the best way I could answer that.
So essentially what your answer is that you
When I
came up
was
with this
free.
idea after the point of recusal?
It wasn't even thought of prior to that because I knew I was bound by 5 council members. When I was no longer part of it and I was able to have a conversation about the locations, then I was able to get more information, then I questioned the information, and then that's how I was able to get to that point.
Yes, Deputy Mayor.
Mr. Converse, the last thing I want you to feel is like you're on the hot seat right now, but
I'm fine.
I just think that we need to understand it better for all of us. So I'm going to try to go to a different area where there is hopefully no conflict, which is the petition that refers to the Ridge Road, Pompton Ave property that's not the subject of the rezoning next week, and of which is not within 200 feet of Mr. Converse's house. So I just think it might be easier and cleaner to ask some questions as it relates to that.
Can I pause you for a
Sure,
second?
sure, please.
I'm conflicted because we discussed that in closed session, and any comments made pertaining to that, I would not be able to answer.
I won't ask you anything that was discussed in closed session.
Okay.
So I'm just,
And just for point of clarity, Deputy Mayor, we do understand that by virtue of the fact that Councilman Ken Boris is on the, he's a member of the petition committee, that is a basis for conflict, but that did not cause him to waive his First Amendment rights, and that's why he's able to communicate from the podium on that issue. So he's certainly free to answer those questions, as you had indicated, but you did mention that there wasn't a conflict. I just wanted to make sure
Okay,
that we're
fair enough.
clear on that point.
so can I ask or no?
I think you can.
Can I ask one
Sure,
question?
please.
By going into discussion, could this possibly recuse me from being a committee member or part of the petition? You see what I'm saying? I got to watch the answers that I give.
Well, I don't, are you saying that you're waiving any sort of attorney-client privilege on this issue?
I'm not saying, I'm saying.
Well, I mean, but for me to give you
based on
legal
the
advice,
answers that I'm giving, right, depending on what the questions are.
my advice to you is not to discuss anything with regard to your role as a councilman or
Correct.
closed session.
Okay, yes.
Okay?
All right.
Mr. Simmer, I have one question. And tell me if it's good or not. And if you
Okay,
don't-
so then why don't you just wait a second,
Yeah,
Mr.
so, and if
Kimborst,
you don't
before
feel
you answer
comfortable
it?
answering it, I think it's just important. So, with regard to the Ridge Road, Pompton Ave property, it's a similar question to before, which is, do you have any information on that property that would help the town council assess whether it's possible to acquire it? Do you know if it's for sale? Have you gathered that information? Just, because I ask, and we can't reveal what was discussed in closed session, but the petition identifies a price, it identifies that property, and I'm just, I want to better understand whether you have information around that property, because I'm just going to, we were given a memo, as you were as well, and if I can, this is a public document as far as I know.
The memo
Mr. Tucci.
from my office?
No.
Oh, I
No.
apologize.
No, this is a public memo, Mr. Tucci. So I just want to read this so it's not my words. This is a memo from our township manager, Tom Tucci, to the township council.
Do I have a copy of that?
You do. Yeah. And it just says, it is my understanding there is some desire in the community to acquire all open space properties and bond for the acquisition dollars, which was previously discussed by the governing body and would be the desire of all, but this may not be feasible. First, some of the subject properties are not currently on the market. Secondly, one is currently under contract with a proposed development plan pending and was subject of a lawsuit as the current owner sold it to two developers at the same time. So I don't want to use my words, that's why I thought it might be helpful to read from there. So do you have anything that changed from this memo that would help?
The property that I'm recused from?
Yes. No, on the Ridge Road, Pompton Ave property.
Okay, no.
Okay. That's all that I have. I appreciate you answering my questions.
Anytime.
I have one other question. Are you aware of a second petition that's circulating around town at this current time?
I'm aware of a second petition. I don't know if it is actually circulating yet.
Okay. Can you tell me what that second petition is about? Or can you let us know?
I think it would be a conflict if I was to say anything pertaining to it.
Is it a, well, okay. I can tell you that a resident was approached and asked to sign a petition, so it is circulating around town.
Okay.
Okay. So I can tell you that when the first petition circulated around town, I was kept in the dark even though I contacted you and I asked you what it was about. I didn't think that was proper, that the council was being kept in the dark, the mayor was being kept in the dark. So I'm asking you now if you can shed light as to what a second petition is. I think that we have a right as a council to know what it is. Do I have to wait for a resident to get a copy and bring it to me, like I had to do the first time? Or can you tell me what the basis of it is?
There is other committee members present. I don't think, as a sitting council person, I would think it would be appropriate for me to talk about it.
Okay. Is there a committee person here that you can point to that I can ask that question to?
Yes, you have a copy of one of the petitions there with the list of the 5 petitioners on it.
Okay. I have it. Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Camboris? Do you have any comments or anything, or you can withhold that till later, or if you want to say anything, you're more than welcome now. It's public comment.
Just a generalized statement. I feel that our open space in this town is probably the most important thing that we have. If we develop it, we can never get it back. It's almost impossible to try to do that. Very expensive. The expense is ridiculous. I believe that taking something old and making it new again is a better choice when it comes to this stuff. I can't go into too much detail because then I feel I'm crossing the line. But I would ask the council that if this petition goes through, which it seems that it's going in that direction, that you postpone the September 17th meeting, only because if it goes on the ballot on the special election, people are going to vote on that, and that's most likely going to overturn whatever the results are on the 17th, because the residents are going to, probably vote in that direction, maybe not, but it's going to be up to them. So I'm asking that maybe it might be a good idea if we postpone it. The secondly is that maybe if the council's pleasure would be to entertain this and purchase these 2 properties, we wouldn't have to go through having a special election. The 3 committee petitioners can withdraw their petition at any time should the council decide to take this up. That's it.
Thank you.
Is that it?
Before I open it up to public comment, any other council members have any comment on the issue?
I have
Councilwoman?
questions, but because Mr. Camburis is conflicted out, I would prefer to ask another committee member. So, Mr. Schneider, I don't know, were you planning on coming up to talk? Or if you are, then I'll save my questions but I could ask, you're a committee member and I'd like, okay, thank you.
Good evening again, David Snyder, 4 Granite Drive, Cedar Grove, and I'd be happy to answer if I
Thank you
can.
so much. First of all, I want to thank you for your efforts. As we stated, preserving open space is all of our, our desire. No one wants building in Cedar Grove. But I'm trying to understand this petition. As the mayor stated, it came to us late in the stage. I started getting calls from friends saying, that people were knocking on their door, and I had no knowledge of this.
Okay.
So I'm just trying to get a good understanding of it so we could all, if it does come to us to approve it, I have a good understanding of where it's coming from.
And may I just say, I apologize for not even thinking that I should come to your door and knock and let you know what's going on. I just took the petition to my neighborhood
Yeah, that's
and to
understandable.
my friends, and
That's fine.
I now am a bit more politically understanding the process than I did before.
Okay. No
So,
worries.
I'm sort of
Thank you.
green behind the ears on
Always
this
feel
kind
free
of...
to knock on my door, Mr. Schneider.
Thank you, thank you.
Okay, so I read the petition, and you have Cliffside Drive and Ridge Road. right?
Yes.
How did you identify those properties?
Well, as the town manager spoke earlier tonight, looking at town maps and
Okay.
identifying properties. You may recall that last year, as a member of the Cedar Grove Environmental Commission, we took an inventory in town of all the various properties. We had it on the website. We asked people in their own backyards to look and take an inventory of the residents, that they identify what birds, what kind of animal life, what kind of environmental concerns they might see around. And we took in a lot of good data.
Okay.
And from that learning and from the maps, I think any of us residents can see that there's just very few places available now for open space.
Right, okay.
So that's how I determined, in my knowledge of Cedar Grove, that those places, as you drive around town, are still undeveloped.
Perfect.
Currently. I don't know anything about plans for buyers or anything up for sale. I just know that those properties currently are beautiful woodlands and are part of what we have inventoried.
Right, okay. So why wasn't the reservoir property included on the petition? Because that's the largest parcel.
Well, my
If you looked at a
understanding,
map, you would have identified that as well.
my understanding as I live near Reservoir, is that that property currently, as it is being utilized by Newark Water Resources, what's the proper title? Water
The watershed property.
Shed property. It is being utilized currently as a open space. There are trails behind their property.
Right.
There are people who maintain what I would call sidewalk area around the reservoir by the Newark Watershed property. So they mow the grass there.
Right.
They maintain it in a way that preserves open space. And I have even now, thinking through what the the grant that the national government may be giving, it may be a beautiful way to preserve it. So I
sorry.
didn't think it was even something we should buy.
I'm talking about the area across the street from the reservoir, the area that we just purchased.
Yes.
Why wasn't that area on the petition?
Again,
That's the largest parcel of space. So
Right.
So you have all of those the parcels that you identified on the petition are
Right.
not developed.
Right.
So you have one parcel here, and then the largest
Right.
in between. I was just curious as to why that wasn't on the petition.
well, I guess in my own mind, and it could have been a mistake in my mind, but in my mind, that was already trails, already, as part of Cedar Grove, in my mind, already open space.
The
So
Cliffside Drive property is as well, right?
Cliffside Drive is
Trails.
currently, but as I understood from other discussions in the newspaper in the past year, that property was perhaps, as was even mentioned tonight, in conversation about being sold. Is that, it's been in a while. It's been in a while.
Conversation.
Well, it's been
Closed
in the
session.
paper, I do believe.
Okay, all right. I was just curious as to why that was left
Yeah.
off. So the
And I also,
properties-
I should back up, just say, I did walk that property for the first time this spring and realized that environmentally, what it preserves in terms of water resources. So I was a little bit more aware of it just because I'd walked that property.
Yeah.
Most recently.
Good. So the properties that you want to purchase,
Yeah.
who owns them, and how much are they're willing to sell it to us, and for how much?
That, I'm not, I am not a real estate person, so it's a guesstimate. It's just a honest evaluation of what land property might be. I don't have a conversation with a real estate agent. I don't have anything to back that up. It just, the possibility is before us to recommend, as I understand it, recommend setting aside certain amounts. I don't know whether that would even be, in the end game, enough money for it. But it was just, again, an educated guesstimate.
Okay, but wouldn't the property, you have a petition with 700 people signing it.
Yes.
Wouldn't you have to know that the property is for sale? Like,
Well,
that's what confused me the most,
Yeah.
because
okay.
I would think that you're saying to people, we're going to put this question on, it's going to be a referendum, we're going to take this land, you have specific blocks and lots and everything. Don't you have to know that it's for sale?
No.
Who owns it?
No. I'll tell you why. My grandfather owned a lot in Indiana for years and years and years. And no one, even in the family, knew what he was going to do with that property, a woodland property, prior to his death. It was left to the estate to determine. So in my mind, in thinking it through, wouldn't it be wiser at this stage to allow the township not to go through with the Hilltop? I was here just at the early stages in my residency here in Cedar Grove to understand how difficult Hilltop was for all of the community. 20-some years, it had been a struggle. And in my mind, reflecting upon that, wouldn't it be a way to begin conversation around wise usage of town money and property in the moments when land becomes available, in the moments when families determine estate sale or
So
estate.
you're saying like have a reserve in case it
Absolutely,
becomes
and
available.
then allow people to realize that so that it doesn't just all of a sudden say, whoops, it was sold.
Got it. Okay. Okay. So we don't know if it's.
I don't know.
We don't know if this land, if it is for sale, even if it were for sale, if they were willing to sell it to us.
That's correct.
All of that is unknown.
Unknown to me.
Except for the memo that came out, right, that you read. So.
And my hope is that it would be in good faith, that the family or the estate of whatever ownership of the land would work with the township, again, to acknowledge that we're all on the same page about desiring open space.
Right.
As an owner, again, my grandfather of the open space of the woodland in Indiana did not want, he was a farmer too, but he wanted that area carved out just for trees.
Yeah.
And so that was his wishes.
Okay.
So that's what I'm thinking it through that way.
Okay. So.
Mr. Snyder, a couple of questions.
Yes.
Did the committee do any investigation as to find out whether that property over on Ridge Road at Pompton Avenue is even buildable before they put together a petition to dedicate tax money to purchase it?
Buildable, meaning?
Well, is it wetlands? Is it landlocked? Are there qualities of that land that would prohibit it from being built on anyway?
A very good question. I'm not sure that technically it is unbuildable. I do know that it's each property has its uniqueness regarding the environmental qualities that it gives to our community. Uniqueness is that most likely, if it were a property developed, would no longer have that same environmental value, particularly when it comes to the ability to absorb water, as the landscape right now is able to absorb water and offer to us various insects and various animal life that protects the quality of Cedar Grove's air and water quality currently. So any further development would increase on those properties the problem we have with water runoff, the volume of water rushing, and that kind of experience.
And I certainly appreciate that could possibly be the case, but I guess my question was, did anybody in the committee investigate any of that as to the buildability or development ability of that property before putting it on a petition and submitting it to our residents?
Honestly, I don't know technically, again, the ability for that property to be built upon, because I'm not a person of that ability to know. But I can tell you that in walking that property and looking it over and doing some conversation with others in terms of environmental, what do you see here, what did we see before, what kinds of grass grows there, what kind of trees stand there, what kind of opportunity, not just for deer, but fox, eagles, what kind of quality of life do they present to us? And that, for me, means at all costs, that we are able to generate enough funds to purchase those lands to keep it that way forever. That would be the ideal management, and I think it would mean so much to our town.
Mr. Snyder, one further question. I asked Mr. Camboris this question. I'm going to ask if you can give me some insight as to what I've been told as a second petition that's circulating around town right now that residents are being asked to sign. Can you give me some insight as to what that is and what it involves?
I'm not able to, I don't know that petition. I was not involved in that at this time. I don't know.
Okay.
No, I don't. I don't have any information. I've been away from that conversation, so I don't have anything I can help you with.
Okay. Deputy Mayor?
Mr. Mayor, I don't have any questions. I actually just want to say thank you for, all the hard work that you put in for this town. I know that after we had the major rainstorms, I saw you out there taking pictures.
Yeah.
So I know where your heart's at.
Thank you.
I think we all know where your heart's at. And, the questioning is just trying to information gather. But,
Absolutely.
Mr. Snyder, I can tell you that I've talked to you for the past year and a half. You are one of the most genuine people that I've ever met. And I know that your heart is in the environment for Cedar Grove, and that's what you care about. So that's all I have to say about you, Mr. Snyder.
Thank you.
I should say I have one question.
Yes.
You mentioned some data that you had, that you gathered a year ago. Do we have
Yes.
that?
Yes, it was a,
Okay.
Mara is our chairperson,
Okay.
and she's the keeper of that data.
Perfect. That's, I just wanted to thank you for your time that you put in Cedar Grove.
Thank you.
Mr. Snyder, I echo those comments, and we all know how genuine your concern is for the town, and you and I have known each other way back to my Board of Education days, and we spent a lot of time talking about the school system, and now spend a lot of time talking about the town. So I do appreciate that. I do appreciate all of your concern and all of your involvement. Is there somebody here that's on the committee that you might be able to answer my question about a second petition that you can, I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but if there's someone I can
No,
ask.
sir, I don't see anyone from the petition, the first petition that I was a part of here tonight.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions for Mr. Snyder?
Thank you very much.
Well, again, thank you for your efforts, and I think we are all in agreement that open space is very valuable and important to us, so thank you for your concern and considerable time.
Thank you. Before I open up for further public comment, there is a point that I don't want to belabor because we do have a public hearing next week, and I did caution everyone that we're not going to talk about certain things. However, we were presented with a memo from the town manager today, and I believe there's some salient and relevant points on that in that memo that I would like to read into the record, just so everyone has the benefit of it. And it's concerning the acquisition of open space. And I'm reading from the fourth paragraph of the memo. It says, while we all desire more open space and acquisition seems the most logical and simplistic option, Cedar Grove would still have its obligations to meet the Council on Affordable Housing criteria set out by the courts if it were to acquire all available open space. This will subject the township to builders' remedy lawsuits and allow for development as directed by the courts without township input. In a worst case, Cedar Grove taxpayers would be left with a large debt service for over 20 years, and we still incur unwelcome development. I believe that's a very important fact, and we're gonna talk a lot more about that, I believe, with our professionals next week. But I didn't want to leave that unsaid as we move forward. So, is there anybody else that has any further comment on any items regarding the petition or anything we've been talking about, the acquisition of open space? Yes.
Hi, my name is Leo Stringer, 4 Highview Terrace, Cedar Grove. Yeah, I just want to thank Mr. Snyder and the committee for getting that petition together. I think the number of 700 people is probably very low. If it got out to everyone through social media, to the town, you're going to get more response. And I think as a council, just need to realize that that is, in my opinion, probably the feeling of the town. We do not want more development. Our schools can't handle it. our town can't handle it. We're gonna change the face of the town. Legally, whatever, I know there's all the legal implications that you guys have to deal with. I don't have to deal with it as I speak. I don't know them, so I can act them. But it's just sad. It's sad that we have to go to this length. And we're talking about open space, which I think is great, protect it, but it's not enough. Because if one of those, or a couple of those buildings on Commerce, say Commerce would take the other area out of the picture. If they decide they want to build houses, we need our zoning board to say no. Our zoning board needs to have the power to say no. I don't understand why you can't. If I try to put an in-ground pool in my backyard against my fence, I'm going to be told no, because it's too close to my fence. And that no is going to be no, so they're not going to change that rule. So why are we changing these rules for every developer that comes along? And maybe that's a bigger question than us, but that's something that, as a town, we need to be able to vote on that. Put that on the ballot. That's why things that come on the ballot need to be given to the people. We need to get control back and get the control out of the developers' hands. And stop telling us that we have to do this, we have to build affordable housing. If we're not building houses, we don't need to go out and build affordable houses when we're not building anything else. So that's just say no zoning, no building. We did it with Hilltop. We lost Hilltop. That's a big loss. We haven't seen, nobody has seen the effects of that yet. We're going to see it in a couple of years as the schools, as they end up opening LRP. You're going to end up opening LRP, you're going to go space in the schools. And then we're going to build another 300-unit development, and then open it up for every developer, every warehouse that decides, I'm going to make more money selling houses, I'm going to put condos here, and you can't say no because you already said yes to the other places. So I think it's really bad. I think the gentleman that talked about Seacock is not far off. So I think we have the chance to stop it now. That's what we need to do, fight. If they want to fight, then fine. We're going to let them take us to court. It'll take them 20 years to do it. I think it'll be cheaper for us in the long run. That's just my opinions.
Mr. Mayor. If I may.
Yeah, sure, Deputy Mayor.
Mr. Stringer, I want to thank you for coming up here. I will tell you this, once again, I said this maybe 5 times, we all wholeheartedly agree with the efforts to preserve open space.
Yeah.
You know, as shown by the 53 acres.
I know you guys do.
And the efforts to do that. So I just want to reassure you that everybody up here, and obviously Mr. Cambaris as well, we all wholeheartedly agree with you.
So I think my question
With
is
regard
more
to-
of, as a community that are not bound by the rules that you guys have, what can the community do? How do we come in and say no? Because we should be able to say no. We should be able to stop the construction, say no. We don't want construction. It has nothing to do with affordable housing. I don't care if it's affordable housing or if it's a $3 million house. It's still construction, it's still the same problem.
Mr.
Affordable
Stringer,
housing is not the problem.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but we're starting to cross over into discussion that is best left for next week. So I would appreciate you to hold off those comments and those questions, and you can ask them next week when we have our professionals here, our attorneys, our planners, and maybe you can get an answer to that question. But it's not appropriate for right now because we can't discuss it until we have our professionals here with us, okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
But please come next week.
Yes,
Thank you.
absolutely.
Yeah, I thought that was this week, actually. It originally was.
Fair enough.
That changed.
Thank you.
Anybody else wishing to be heard? Yes, Mr. McVeigh?
Kevin McVeigh, 19 Briarwood Terrace. I want to say that I feel very comfortable with all the comments and the passion that you've exhibited as far as keeping Cedar Grove green. I feel very, very comfortable with that. However, I do want to go on record as Kevin McVeigh, urging you to reject ordinances 18-829 and 18-830.
Mr. McVeigh, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to interrupt you, and I don't like doing that, but I would love to hear your comments regarding those ordinances. this is not the right time or the right place, that's going to happen next week. So I know your position, I understand your position, I just heard it, and I welcome you here next week to urge the council any direction you like to urge the council, but we're not going to take those urgings this
Okay, I
evening.
can appreciate that, Mr. Mayor, but I think next week, this place is going to be packed, to the rafters.
It will.
And I don't know if I'm going to have an opportunity to speak. So the reason I came today is because I want to get my point across so that you folks hear it. I'm not asking you, with all due respect, to answer any questions. I just want to get my point across as Kevin McVeigh at this point in time.
Mr. McVeigh, I'm sorry, I'm not going to allow that, because if everyone who wants to have their say next week came tonight, then we'd have a situation where we had a packed conference room or council chambers for 2 weeks in a row. There's a reason why this public hearing is set for next week. It's a public hearing for comment, it's a public hearing for questions. And I would ask you, with all due respect, to withhold those comments to next week. You will have your say. It will be crowded, but we will make sure we will be here to the last person who wants to be heard will be heard.
Okay.
And I promise you that.
Okay, well, you definitely know my viewpoint, and I'm very, very adamant about that, and I appreciate your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. McVeigh. Anybody else wishing to be heard?
May I have a comment?
Yes, Councilman Tinella?
I just have a couple comments. I heard, I am the one council member here was when Hilltop took place. And as Mr. Snyder pointed out, it was about 20 years in the making, and it was before my tenure on the council. I heard Mr. Stringer, I heard you say before, and I think before I say anything, I agree with the deputy mayor and everybody else up here. I think all of us agree that preserving any open space that can be preserved is, I think personally, the number one issue that's facing us as a council. You're seeing development go on all over in Cedar Grove, as well as you're seeing it in neighboring towns and throughout the state. But I think what a lot of the residents don't understand, that it's just not as easy. Actually, in fact, it's not possible just to say no to development. If it was, I'll say no. It's just not that easy. And I think there was a problem back when we had Hilltop, when just to say just no to the Hilltop, that wasn't an option. Wasn't an option. And in fact, I felt that it was misleading the public to go to the residents and say no to the Hilltop. It wasn't an option. It wasn't that nothing could be done at that point in time. I always felt that the Hilltop, I still feel this day, that was the best of a worst-case scenario. I think I served on the council about 8 years negotiating that deal. 8 years. 6 months, we'd get a memo. It just came back and forth between us, the county, and the developer. Went back and forth. It got to the point when I was finally felt that we needed to, I voted yes to the ordinance at the time with Hilltop, because without divulging anything that went on in executive session, when you're being advised by council that nothing further can be done, but to litigate and put the decision of Hilltop in the hands of a judge who had no vested interest in Cedar Grove, and then any concessions that we negotiated would have been completely off the table, and looking at potentially 1,000 units, where we were able to successfully negotiate 460 units. That was still a lot to me. I didn't want 460 units, but we negotiated 460 units, and again, being told that's the best you're going to get after 8 years, at least my involvement in it. And again, it went on before that. On top of that, we got a county park in Cedar Grove. We got a new firehouse. We're getting the pilot money that we're going to be using now to try to save more open space. We got an all-purpose field. We got a lump sum payment that's going to be made to the township that we're going to be using for possibly preserving open space and using for other tax-saving measures. Those were the reasons, those were the facts why I voted yes for the Hilltop. I didn't want the development. I still don't. I grew up here. 48 years I lived here. I played in those woods where the Hilltop is. I go walk where back by in some of these other areas that we're talking about. I don't want any development. Mr. Snyder, I appreciate what you know, obviously what you know, your passion here. I know Mr. Rozell, I don't want us to be, you said Sea Caucus. I don't want us to look like Sea Caucus. You know, I have a family, young family, my kids I'm raising them here. I don't want it. But I think with the residents, and I'm hoping next week we'll shed some light on it, fail to understand that our hands as council people are tied to a certain degree. I heard back with Hilltop, fight it. You'll run out of money. Hilltop was costing us almost $250,000 a year, if I remember correctly. $250,000 of taxpayer money when you're being advised by council that you're not going to get anything better, and if you don't agree to this deal here, then the deal's off the table and it's going to go back to the judge. I wasn't willing to take that risk. And I think that's what I think is getting lost in some of this. You know, I feel that I hear the passion. I think you hear from us. We're all passionate. I know Councilman Camberos is passionate, but I think what's getting lost on the residents, and it's not your fault, because you don't have the benefit of being in executive session with council, our professionals. You don't have the benefit of knowing all of the facts. Just saying no to development is not an option. At least we all have our own personal view, but that is not an option based upon the advice we've been given by our council and our professionals. So I thought it was important to just clarify that point, because, as I said, I was the one here during Hilltop, and I know that night, what is it, 4 years ago now? 5 years ago? That was the hardest, that was the most difficult night being a council member that I ever faced. And, you know, unfortunately, for better or for worse, the same thing's gonna, you know, it's gonna be a similar situation, I think, as we go forward. And I don't want to, you know, get off track with what we were talking about in respect to mayor's position. But again, I think with the Hilltop, settling that matter and keeping it in our control was important. And I thought it was a prudent thing to do then. And I still think it was a prudent thing to do now. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman. Anybody else wishing to be heard on this issue? Okay, before we close the meeting, I'm just going to ask, Mr. Burns, would I be able to ask you a question as a committee member?
Absolutely.
Can you please step to the podium so we can make sure it's on mic? You ask us enough questions, I figure maybe we'll ask you one for now.
Paul Burns, 2-0.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. Mr. Burns, I'm just curious, I recognize your name being on the petition as one of the committee people. Are you familiar with a second petition that is circulating around town right now?
I am.
Can you shed some light on that and tell us what it's all about?
The whole idea that I am pushing that petition was to not to change the ordinance. I don't think the ordinance needs to be changed, and that's the whole gist of it. I want it to be, the ordinance to be kept. There's a reason why we need ordinances in this town, and that's my opinion. And that's the only reason I'm asking people to sign it.
Okay, so just to be clear, you're talking about the ordinance, the zoning ordinance that we're having on?
I don't think the property should be rezoned. That's my opinion.
Okay, and the petition calls for the non-rezoning of that Cliffside Drive property?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. Mr. Burns, if it's possible to get me a copy of that petition, I'd like to see it.
Next week I'll give it to you, give it to everybody.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else wishing to be heard? Yes. Mr. Martinelli.
John Martinelli, 30 Hillside Drive. I just have a couple of comments. First thing off is, I just want to, reiterate pretty much what you guys said about Mr. Shona. I was at 9/11 17 years ago. I've seen a lot of my friends die. I was in the thick of it, and for you guys to put that together with, Mr. Shona spearheading it, I just want to commend him, because you don't forget, especially the people that I had to see. It was a very bad day, and stuff that nobody should see, what I saw that day, and few other people, but I just wanted to personally thank them myself. Also, in addition, I want to thank everybody on the council for the land that you did save, the 53 acres. Everybody here was happy, but I understand what you're saying, being up there, certain stuff we're not privy to, but, and I'm sure you understand this, I just want to pretty much reiterate what everybody says, what that gentleman said over there. We don't fully understand what's going on behind the scenes, and you're not privy in every respect to bring it out, because it is confidential, and it could, you know, it's just that the town people itself, because I've been here 8 years with Mr. Rousseau, I'm actually his neighbor, we just feel a sense of helplessness. We feel a sense that it's not what you're doing. It's like just somebody coming in like Big Brother and just taking over the town. This is the way it's going to be, whether you like it or not. And that just incenses us, because as yourself, and I know everybody on the council with the exception of Ms. Peterson, my son plays for, you know, Mr. Vargo, and like I say, I have utmost respect for everybody on the council, because I
He's a
know
good
you guys
baseball
go
player,
through a
too.
lot. Thank you, thank you. So's your son. And,
from his mother.
but I'm a little nervous saying this, but it's just that everybody came here for, I think, Mr. Tonella, he grew up in the neighborhood, and I understand, and don't get me wrong, the town people themselves really appreciate what you guys are doing. Really appreciate it. It's just that since we don't have all the information, just sometimes we feel helpless, like Big Brother's coming in, this is the way it's gonna be, we're gonna build in your town, you're gonna change the whole, you know, like, you know, structure of the town, and we know it's coming down the pike. That hilltop, as Mr. Tennell said, nobody wanted it, but we know what the impacts are gonna be. We haven't seen it yet, but we have a pretty good idea what's gonna happen. And I think the people that put that petition out personally, I think it's a good idea, whether they showed, you know, all counts, whatever, I get that. But the flip side is, if it can help save the town, I mean, it's really, you know, it's a win-win situation for everybody. That's all I'm trying to bring out. And like I say, a lot of people here, you know, feel helplessness that every time we turn around, you know, our hands are tied, and they may be so, don't get me wrong. But I'm just saying is, after that hilltop, I feel we can't take any more, you know, building in the area, you know, and we worry about the tax consequences and things like that. And Joe, I know you personally, and I'm sure you do too. You know what I mean? I just wanted to bring it to light. This is why the people feel the way they do. That's it.
And I understand that, and I appreciate that, Mr. Mornelli, and I can tell you, without divulging what's said in executive session, I can tell you that the frustration that you're expressing right now has been expressed by each and every member, the 5 of us on this dais, with 4 of us, and Mr. Camboris. We've all expressed the same frustration to each other, to our officials, to our professionals, and that's not lost on us, okay? Next week, you come here and you'll get a full picture and a better understanding, and you'll have more of the understanding that we've gained over the last year and a half discussing this. And I think it's important for everyone to hear that. So I do encourage, I know it's a small space. We had discussed possibly moving it to a bigger space, but then we wouldn't be able to televise it, and we figured more people would be watching it on TV live than would come to the meeting. So we felt it very important that we have it here so we can put it on TV and broadcast it. So it is going to be a packed house, but we are going to have a full slate of people here, and they're going to explain a lot of the things that you just talked about, okay?
I want to thank each and everybody on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Martinelli. Anybody else wishing to be heard? Okay, before we close the meeting and go to executive, I just also like to call for an executive on the issue of property acquisition. So, do I have to do a, okay. This time, I'm going to ask for authorization to go into executive session, whereas Section 8 of the Open Public Meetings Act permits the exclusion of the public from a meeting of the mayor and council in certain circumstances, and whereas the mayor and council of the Township of Cedar Grove are of the opinion that such circumstances exist, now therefore be it resolved by the mayor and council of the Township of Cedar Grove, County of Essex, and State of New Jersey, that the public shall be excluded from discussion of any action on the executive session of the meeting of the mayor and council of September 10th, 2018. The general nature of the subject matters to be discussed are PBA negotiations and property acquisition. It is anticipated at this time that the above stated subject matter will be made public as soon thereafter as it is deemed to be in the public interest to do so. This resolution shall take effect immediately.
So moved, Mayor.
Second.
May I have roll call, please?
Councilman Maderos?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Councilwoman Peterson?
Yes.
Councilman Canella?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Varga?
Yes.
Mayor Sekela?
Yes.
Motion for adjournment, Mayor.
Is there a second?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you. We'll see everyone next week, September 17th, right here at 7 o'clock.